Hey everyone, I'm so glad that you came back to learn more with me. This week we're going to be learning about transgender, what that term means, what should you do if somebody comes out to you as transgender, and just overall common knowledge of what you should know, what you should do, what you should not do, and everything in between. So stay tuned and come learn with me. The first term that we should start with, obviously, is what does transgender mean? So, transgender is a term used to describe people whose gender identity differs from the sex that they were assigned to at birth. For transgender people, the sex they were assigned to at birth and their own internal gender identity do not match. So people in the transgender community may describe themselves using one or more terms, which include transgender, transsexual, and non-binary. And you should always, this is very important, you should always use the term used by the person. So if they consider themselves as transgender, you will obviously identify them as a transgender. If they identify themselves as non-binary, you will do the same. Always be respectful to what the person has chosen for themselves and how they identify and how they feel comfortable being called. You should never want to get out of boundaries or cross any boundaries, be disrespectful in any way, and that is something that's super important that you should always remember. So some transgender people go through transition, which many transgender people are prescribed hormones by their doctors to change their bodies. So this is basically like those videos that you might see and they're saying, this is my voice 1 month on T, 2 months on T, or so on. They're basically on these hormones and they are obviously trying to change their bodies in order to match how they identify. Some undergo surgeries as well. However, it's also important to remember that not all transgender people will go through surgery, and it's important to know that being transgender is not dependent on these medical procedures or even being on hormones. Transgender is an adjective and should never be used as a noun. For example, you should not say Veronica is a transgender. You should say Veronica is a transgender person or Veronica is a transgender woman. So some celebrities that are currently out as transgender are Chaz Bono, who is the child to Sonny Bono and Cher. There's also Jennings from the TLC show I Am Jazz. We know the fabulous Miss Laverne Cox from Orange is the New Black. And somebody else that we might all know is Hunter Schafer from Euphoria, who plays Jules. So each of them have been out and proud and have shared their stories and their journeys. So if you want to know more about them or know more about their journeys, I will link some links below in order for you to check them out. So in recent events, we might hear all over the news, there has been many newsworthy stories about transgender people and their rights. So you might wonder, Why is transgender equality so important? Well, just like you and me and everyone else, transgender people are literally just people trying to live their lives and trying to make a living, trying to live in this world. And they're not any different. They are just normal people, how I said, just trying to live. Yet they unfortunately face a bigger amount of poverty, discrimination, and violence towards them. According to a survey done in 2015, transgender people experience unemployment rate at 3 times the general population and 4 times for trans people of color. And 30% of transgender people report being fired, denied a promotion, or experiencing mistreatment in the workplace due to their gender identity. 31% of transgender people experienced mistreatment in the past year in a public accommodation, including 14% of those who denied equal service, 24% of those were verbally harassed, and 2% were physically attacked because they were transgender. 40% of respondents reported attempting suicide in their lifetime, nearly 9 times the attempted suicide rate in the United States. Transgender people, particularly transgender women of color, face shockingly high rates of murder, homelessness, and incarceration. Most states and countries have no legal protections in housing, employment, healthcare, and other areas where individuals experience discrimination based on their gender identity or expression, which is so sad because, as I mentioned, they're just human as everyone. They are just trying to make a living and just trying to live life, yet there's so many obstacles in their way and so many people against them, saying that they can't be who they are.
If you or anyone you know needs someone to talk to, Trans Lifeline's hotline is available 24/7. They're a peer support phone service run by trans people. For the US number, it is 877-565-8860, and for Canada, it is 877-330-6366. And anyone is able to call any of these numbers depending on where you're at. Anyone is able to call and get more information, or if they just want to or need to talk to somebody, they are always available.